This is where the fun begins.
Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
King Kong ain't got shit on me!
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the
Everybody
procedure,
stay calm.
everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Say my name.
And here we go.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Grab your snacks, get the popcorn ready. It's about to get realish. Today, I am your host, Chris Negron, as always, being joined by our fearless leader, the creator of OTS, my guy, Derrick Myers. It's great to have you back, my man. How's it going?
Sir. Great to be back, bro. I appreciate you, man. Appreciate you holding things down. I've been gone, so been doing a great job. Today we don't have Matt with us. He's feeling a little under the weather, so get better, bro.
Definitely get better, Matt. We're missing you, but you'll be back real soon. And I just got to mention it too, off the top, man. You go on a little hiatus, you pop back up, and you just looking in exquisite form right now. I just gotta say, the camera's looking amazing. You got the lights going. I'm looking shitty right now. I gotta step the game up with the theatrics because my optics aren't as good as yours right now.
Hey, bro. We both have a background in production, and so my brain doesn't stop. So I was just trying to figure out what I can do to make sure things look a little bit better. But yeah, man. Yeah,
yes, sir. It's looking great. I just gotta say though.
Appreciate you.
That wire, I don't know. That wire right there is killing me. But besides that, I'm fucking with you, bro. But today we got an action-packed show, right? So we gotta get to the particulars, right? Before this train gets too derailed. For today's discussion, we're gonna start out first talking about a very important thing going on right now for writers in Hollywood. There's a big strike going on with the Writers Guild, and I think it's important that we talk about that. But we are also going to be introing a new kind of feature presentation here that we're really excited to drop here. So Derrick, why don't you take it away? Let us know what this new presentation is going to be about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we have a new segment that is likely you're gonna be seeing it pop up on other OTS shows because it's actually a brainchild of mine like a few years back called the Ology. So it's going to be the studying of different things, and this is going to give us a breakdown, opportunity to do a in-depth breakdown of a multitude of things. So for Realish, you're going to see us in this segment break down an actor's filmography. We're going to talk about trilogies, different TV shows, docuseries, etc., stuff like that. And other shows like Fans, we'll see different breakdowns. So an artist's discography, albums, different album breakdowns, mixtapes, all that other stuff. Even probably talking about some producers, stuff like that. But for this segment, we're going to do a little later on. We're actually going to kick off a 3-episode series. We're going to be discussing the Godfather trilogy. Which I think that Chris, Matt, and I have been trying to figure out different things we can do to kind of like make this thing a little more interactive and fun. This one is going to actually be a really great breakdown because we're going to be discussing this episode, just the first film, The Godfather, which is directed by Francis Ford Coppola, starring Marlon Brando and Al Pacino. So that's going to be a fun breakdown. I can't wait to get into that with you. And then Matt will be with us next time to discuss part 2, Godfather 2. So, there's a lot of interesting thoughts on the whole trilogy that people have. So I'm very interested in getting into the discussion with you a little later, bro, because it's gonna be a fun one.
For sure, man. I'm chomping at the bit already. Just think of all the things
Yeah.
I've got to say about one of my favorite movies ever. But before we get into all that, we want to remind all of you to make sure that you're following us on all social media platforms. We got OTS Media Co. and OTS Media on YouTube. So OTS Media on YouTube, OTS Media Co. everywhere else. Make sure you are subscribing, and hitting that notification bell on every platform just so that you don't miss any of our uploads, right? Why would you want to miss the great great stuff we got coming out on all different fronts of media. So there's so much
Yeah.
stuff being covered on OTS. Don't sleep. Don't sleep. Tell a friend to tell
And
a friend. But
yes,
with
sir.
all that being said, man, let's temper it down a little bit. I know I've been hyped, but this is a very serious topic, right? We're talking about
Yeah.
the money that goes in people's pockets here. So,
Yeah.
just to give a quick intro, the Writers Guild, obviously in solidarity with their what would you call them? Not employees, right? Guild members, union members.
Union
They're
members.
all
Yeah.
working together to sort of set different parameters for writers in their pay scale based off of how much money these movies are making, what kind of a distribution window these movies have, and a whole bunch of different angles to try to really get them up to speed with the rest of the industry.
Hmm.
So this is a broad topic. There's so many different ways we could sort of bounce off of this, but I'm curious on how you feel about this movement, Derrick, and any sort of main takeaways for what's going on right now with the writer's strike.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think there's arguments to be made for both sides, right? Like for the union, for the writers in particular, but also for production companies. I think both sides have arguments to be made, but they do these negotiations. I think like every 3 years anyway to make sure things are updated and everything like that, and then when terms can't be met, that's when you have these strikes. So I think that we were bound to get to this point. We've discussed on the show before about how technology is advancing and all those intricate details that we sometimes don't think about as just the audience. But with you and I, like in particular, having that production experience, there are things behind the scenes that we know that take place um that when one piece is missing, it messes up the whole operation, right? So writers are extremely, extremely important to what we see, what we love, right? With talking about these different movies or shows, you don't have that without the writers. So the way that technology has been advancing, we're not able to kind of like uh measure out what their pay should actually be, right? Like there's I think I think we saw this. I think within the music industry when you know Spotify and iTunes all came out, we're streaming music online, right? Like you have it's an advancement in technology, and so there has to be a new way to be able to measure out what royalties look like and pay equal pay for everybody involved, right? So that's where we are right now. Basically, you have people that you have writers that are on these projects that are on these streaming sites and nothing's being you can't measure that out to be able to get the right amount of royalties, and that's fair. That's a fair argument for why you should not continue to work, but there's a lot of stuff that's getting stopped for producing right now. A lot of productions. One of the ones that I was kind of like upset that got affected by this was Stranger Things, right? So like the last
Mhm.
couple of seasons have kind of like there's been like huge gaps in between them,
Mhm.
and this is gonna just I mean there's already gonna be a gap between this final season and the previous season anyway. So now these kids are probably gonna be close to college by the time the show is done. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of things that go into this, which we'll discuss. But you know, I I understand it. I get it. I get it. They
mhm,
are they need to be paid properly, and it
for
needs
sure,
to be it needs to be done the right way.
for sure. And for me, what's really been disheartening is like just seeing some people like, ah, shut up and just do what you got to do. And the fact that anyone could take that stance in today's day and age to me is ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
the age and era of blindlessly what is the word here? Sort of agreeing that the higher powers are doing things altruistically. We know this is
Yeah.
a lie, right? They're not
Yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
gonna. I mean, the old adage, right? You never get what you're worth. You get what you have the power to negotiate. And at the end of the
Right.
day, um, these writers have been underpaid for a really long time. and
For sure.
hearing a lot of the specifics of what they're asking for that is being shot down, it's kind of crazy because you would think
Yeah.
that these things are already sort of standard practice. For example, one of the things that I was looking at was sort of just having a preset minimum to the amount of writers that are on a show before it's greenlit, and then
Right.
after, like, having a certain amount of writers on staff for this production that's already been greenlit.
Mm-hmm.
And for that specific instance, like the other guild, they didn't even have an answer or a counter offer to them. They just shot down this proposal entirely.
Right.
And on the surface level, that doesn't sound like they're asking for an astronomically difficult thing. If anything, you could
Yeah.
imagine how having less than six people writing for a show that big of stature with that big of a
Mm-hmm.
budget, there's no way that you're doing things ethically on that front as far as distributing the work evenly and getting these things done in a timely manner. So
Mm-hmm.
no matter what it is, I'm always in solidarity. Shout out to Pete Davidson. There was a big sort of meme that dropped once he came and dropped off pizza to one of the striking locations in Brooklyn, and everyone's like, everyone asks why Pete Davidson keeps getting away with this shit. This is why. It's because he does things like this. He's a
Yeah.
mensch. You
Yeah.
got to be a mensch out here, and I love to see. Obviously, that's one example, but many examples of people in high status, people who are maybe even the face of a major show that requires writers that are coming out
Yeah.
and in support of this movement. I say kudos to those guys. Continue to do that, because this is a movement that, if you ask me, is probably 10 years or so late already.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, and of course, like kind of alluded to earlier, but these streaming platforms don't, there's no way to actually like tell how many times people are actually like streaming these projects. And I mean, there's I get it. I get it from both sides, from the writer's perspective, but also the production's perspective, the production studios perspective. Like there's one thing that the WGA wanted, right? And that was like, it was on the issue of minimum length of writer employment. So um a lot of people don't understand is that these writers are actually, it's technically like a contract position, right? You're almost like a freelancer in a way, but
All
the W
filmmakers, you're a freelancer,
right, right.
1099 all day.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not, it's like based on the amount of projects you get, right? You're not working on these projects all like, you have no security, job security. Let me put it like that. So the WGA proposed like this blanket setup where for every pre greenlit project, there's 10 consecutive weeks that's there. Um, and after the project is greenlit, 3 weeks per episode they're guaranteed to work on, right? So 3 weeks per episode, the writers get to work on those episodes, and then 50% of that writing staff is retained throughout the production. And then one writer will be retained through post production, or for a maximum of 52 weeks, which we know is a year. um I can understand why production studios did not want that, right? Not all like every production is not equal. So
Mhm.
I can understand why they would say we don't want a blanket structure for every project. That's kind of ridiculous if you're talking about let's say we're talking about trying to think of an example of a show that's 8 episodes. Um okay, let's say for example like House of the Dragon, right? I believe that was about 8 episodes. The amount of work that you have to do on House of the Dragon is different than what you would have to work on for, let's say, The Simpsons, right? Simpsons is relatively around. Ooh, I don't even know where they are right now. I want to say it's closer to like 20 episodes a season. I mean, they're like
Yeah.
in season 30 something now, so I like whatever, 30, close to 40 at this point. But they're the work that the writers on The Simpsons will have to do, which is 30 minute episodes, pretty much. versus an hour episode. Um, and actually for House of the Dragon, two of those episodes, I believe, two or three of those episodes were like an hour and a half
Mhm.
long episodes. So those the structure for writers to that are working on shorter episodes in terms of the amount of episodes versus the length and time for some of them. So some are a lot longer than others, and you have longer seasons for other shows. The idea that every project gets the same setup is kind of it's a bit of a stretch. So I can understand where production studios are coming from with that. But I agree there should be some setup, some structured setup to where they're able to have guaranteed uh weeks for per episode, you know? Like I agree with that. I
Mhm.
agree with that because you're and also you're not working like not all writers are actually working on the entire season. I think people don't understand that either. Like some writers are only working on maybe like 3 episodes per season,
Or
you
a
know,
part of an episode,
or a part of an episode.
literally.
Yeah. So it's not even it's not all projects are not created equal. So I can understand where the production studio is coming from with that, but there needs to be a structure set up. But
Sure.
this is going to end up I think this is going to end up going into like a legal battle because you're talking about streaming sites like Netflix, HBO Max, Hulu, that don't have to share their numbers, right?
Mhm.
And that's where I think we should be looking at. I think that's the point they need to be looking at right now. This needs to go into to a space where they are legally required to share what those numbers are, so that the payment can actually be measured to say, hey, okay, we're gonna you'll get this amount of residual. You know what I'm saying? Or if you don't want to go based on the number of streams, go based on the number of subscribers.
Mhm.
You know, there is some way to measure this out. Um, it's just that some studios are going to be able to get away with stuff right now. They're able
I
to get
mean,
away with stuff.
they have been for so many years, literally for so
Yeah,
many years. I
yeah,
think the main point too, which I love that you touched on, but I feel like the main point is like really extending the quality of life to your job environment, right? Think about
right.
this, right? I would imagine a lot of these writers end up getting called in last minute. So they're not even working on the project necessarily. They end up getting called in last minute for, let's say, just one episode. Let's say in this
Right.
hypothetical. They're only working on that one episode. And then they're balls to the wall, probably working multiple hours during a week, more than you probably would in a 9 to 5 to get
Oh
this
yeah,
done. And then
yeah.
the week's not even done, but they're done with what they had to do for the episode. And then the studio's like, all right, thank you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
thanks for doing what you had to do. And
Yeah,
now it's like, hey, that was nice. I got paid. But
yeah,
now I got to go do the whole shit again, right? I got to find another
yeah,
one and go about that process all over again. So having those minimums enforced, I think, is something that honestly should be inevitable at this point. The fact that it
yeah.
doesn't exist already is kind of crazy. And I hope that they definitely get that. But mainly just the residuals aspect of it has always been a dicey game, right? Because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Nielsen ratings or actual ratings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't the same thing, and people don't get that
Yeah,
either. Like Nielsen
yeah,
ratings aren't necessarily who actually tuned in, right? It's sort of
yeah.
the reach of your product and who could potentially tune in
Mm-hmm.
versus the actual raw numbers of who's watching. So, as far as the actual compensation, I'm not the guy to hash this out and figure out what's the best method. But I would say some combination of the show's individual reach as well as the platform's reach should be taken into account when you're considering the residual. And let's just be real about this here, right? A lot of these shows are passively making millions of dollars, right? Like this isn't
Yeah,
this isn't this isn't a mistake.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and that's after all the contracted money has already left the studio's hands. So this
yeah.
is just money that generally they're accruing on their own. I'm sure there's a lot of people on the film set hierarchy, right, that are getting residual deals, right? So what percentage of the residuals are even available at this point? I would imagine it's not high.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're asking for basically a percentage of a percentage, at this point, it's crazy. And a lot of the counter offers have been actually really disgusting, right? Just entirely not even trying to mend the sort of what's the word here, right? One hand washes the other, right? Someone's bringing up
Hmm.
these conflicts, you want to try to smooth it over in a good way. Like a lot of the counter responses are just kind of like, okay, you want $10, I got three. Like what
Yeah.
are we gonna do about this? And it's just
Yeah.
honestly ridiculous. So I agree,
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that everyone is sort of on a united front about this. I just hope that this continues to make enough of an issue for the studios that they actually are forced to do something about it. Because I'm sure, despite all these different strikes going on, that there's a lot of shows that are still going business as usual and getting things
Oh
done
yeah.
without an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. So like for example, like uh a show I brought up already was House of the Dragon. Their writers got the script finished before the strike went on, right? So like production is already going. So like there are some shows that are already going that are already in production. A lot of them movies like Blade, right? Blade has actually seen a lot of issues over the last year, where they've had to start, stop. And part of it was the writing, and now they're stopped because of the strike, right? Um, and that production has just been a mess, anyways. I think Mahershala Ali has actually been like whooping these guys into shape because I think they really kind of want to just kind of like do it halfway, and that's not how he goes about his business, right? So if you're gonna do it the right way. But I think one of the other issues that these writers had was about the use of AI. So the WGA wanted to propose a ban on AI, on the use of AI to generate any material that falls under WGA contracts. Ban on AI use to generate source materials on the basis of WGA work. Ban on feeding AI WGA work for learning purposes. So like feeding AI scripts for the AI tool to kind of like learn the pattern and spit out a new script based on that, right?
Mhm.
And I can understand why the writers would not want that to take place, why they would not want AI to be a part of this whole thing. Because if you're utilizing AI to generate stories, what's the purpose of a writer, right? And to be honest, I would think that you would want to have a human being writing these stories because we are the ones that are living and having these experiences. On the flip side, I can understand why the studio wants to actually have that
Option.
use.
Yeah.
Have that option where you're using AI. It's cheaper because you don't have to pay.
That's
But
why, I'm sure.
that's why they can write 24/7, so there's no like set schedule. Um, and there's no responsibility to another person, right? So I can understand why a production studio would look at that and say, hey, this is a great tool for us to have. But to be honest, I think AI is actually a perfect tool for writers to use, right? I think it's something that everybody should actually use. I think every industry is gonna benefit greatly from it. I think there's gonna be some people that get impacted, outside of writing. There's gonna be people that get impacted by this, by like for example, the food service industry. They're gonna get severely impacted with AI. But in terms of writers being able to utilize it, it's actually something that they can utilize to structure their flow and actually get more out of their time by utilizing AI. And my understanding would be that if there's a ban on AI altogether, that would be that writers can't use AI as well. So I'm assuming that like there's going to have to be some legislation for AI in general. I mean, it's
Mhm.
getting out of control, in certain areas, but in terms of like the creative space as a creator, like I think you should be able to utilize as much as you can to get as much juice out of an idea that you can, as much as possible, right? And I can understand why writers want to use it, but not want it used against them. And that's what the studios will do. They will use it against the writers and cut that staff down to half, if not a third or a fourth of what it normally would be, and save money on on that, right?
Mhm.
I get it. I get it, but I don't know how that's going to how that would look for a film. I can understand it as like a project where, like, say for example, if you and I wanted to create a short film and said we wanted to utilize AI to come up with a script, and we wanted to use as much AI in that process as possible to say that this is a project done by AI, and then you see how we use it to our advantage, right? I can see where, like, on a passion project, that's a good thing to use. But when you're talking about like studio films, I don't want to. Let me tell you right now, I do not want to go and see a Batman film done by AI. Right now, I personally think that that the Matrix Resurrections would have been better if AI wrote it. But like there are different projects you could say, hey, this might be a little bit better. But in general, I don't want my movies and shows to be written by AI. I want them to be written by people that have experienced different things, or they've learned um uh, uh about different things through history and stuff like that, just studying, right? Like I would love that. I don't want something written by a computer. I don't.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't.
And for me, it's kind of hard. Like, this is gonna sound really existential and philosophical here, but like,
Mm-hmm.
what is even writing at this point? If you're considering that
Right.
these things are being, I mean, you would imagine, right? If AI is writing it, they're editing it to some capacity before turning it in, right? So, is this even your writing? Like, is this your
Yeah.
editing that you're submitting?
Yeah.
And my thing is too, for this, if they do pass some sort of legislation, sounds like a nightmare to try to police it, right? To actually make
Yeah.
sure that the writing is like, especially because I would imagine a lot of things are being turned in over the internet. So what are you like checking
Mm.
for copy and paste? Like, how are you gonna differentiate whether or not someone is using the AI versus not? It just seems like such a big can of worms, which obviously needs to be addressed. But
Yeah.
like you said, I could see basically the downside that falls entirely on the actual working people. It
Yeah.
falls all on the writers.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, these tools theoretically would help them, but now it's like, well, I need to protect myself from losing my job entirely to this, because
Yeah.
we know how corporations run, and at the end of the day, it's it's sickening, right? Because you could be eating well off your profits, and still, no matter what, the best way to make your boss happy is to say, I can do this and I can do it under budget too. So
Yeah.
I know any way they could try to cut a corner, they will. And I would imagine that's why a lot of these conversations are even being had in the first place, man. So I'm
Yeah.
all in solidarity no matter what when it comes to these things, because at the end of the day, I mean, not to be that dude, but I'm not some big business guy. At the end of the day, yes, that's a part of the American dream, right? But at the same time, if you're exploiting everyone that is actually doing the things that need to be done for you to have a product, um, it just feels like unethical, an entirely unethical
Yeah.
thing that you're running away with so many millions of dollars on the back end, and are just happy to not put any of that back into the actual people who are doing the fucking jobs pockets.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, man, I'm in solidarity and hoping that this continues to come out in a positive way for the WGA, because
Yeah.
it seems like a lot of the things they're asking for are just getting shut down.
Yeah. Let me ask you this though. Do you think that this strike is going to take all summer?
Longer, I think it's going to take the rest of the year. I think it's going to be,
Yeah.
there's just too many things um, being negotiated, as well as such a nasty undercut of what is being
Hmm.
asked. that is just sort of like waiting for the other to break, I would imagine. So I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if this draws out even past this year. To be honest, the year
Yeah.
is still young.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I can see this is going to be an amazing time for non-union writers and also freelance artists to come out and actually get onto a lot of these projects. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, there's no way that these production studios are going to wait a year. They're not waiting. Like I think at most we might see them wait till the fall. Like that's like the furthest they're gonna go.
Hmm.
And if nothing is being done at that point, they're gonna freelance this thing, man, and it's gonna end up being where people are taking other people's jobs, and it's gonna suck. It will suck, but for them, it's gonna be amazing for anybody that's not a part of it right now, to do. But the union is so important because you have these stances where you have someone that's actually fighting for you to be able to get equal pay and or fair pay uh for everything you're working on. I do think though, if you're a writer and that's not a union writer, you better petition as many people as you can. If you can get in touch with anybody that has the ability to put you onto any of these projects, show up. This
I
is
was
your
about to
time.
say, I have a question for you. Do you feel that those people who are in writing but aren't necessarily part of the WGA, do you think
Mhm.
that them undercutting this, right, and saying, okay, you're not using WGA people, well, I'm available. Is that
Yeah,
bad for business, like as a whole? Like, is that bad for you, like as the writer? Like, aren't you shooting yourself in the foot?
it's bad for the union writers. It's not bad for the ones that are not part of the union, because honestly, like we live in a society where you know everybody is fighting for themselves. Like that's just how it is, like
Yep.
and just being realistic. So as much as I agree, I stand with the writers in this with the union. um but then I've lived that freelance life. I'm telling you right now, bro. If I were still a part of, if I wanted to actually get back into the film industry, like I was doing, and there were opportunities, I'm jumping on any opportunity I can. And that's just, you know, survival of the fittest at that point. I wouldn't be mad at anybody that went ahead and started trying to make connections and say, hey, that's what the wage you were paying them. I'll do this, for this long, for this amount. Stack up those contracts, build your portfolio. I don't see how that would be bad. You're getting credits. I would do it.
For
If I
sure.
were a writer, I would do it.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. But the philosophical why in me is like, but
Hmm.
if you know, I'm sure a lot of those same people that were once freelancers found their way into the guild, right?
Oh, for sure,
So
for sure.
my thing is, I get it. At the end of the day, it's capitalism, and someone is going to be willing to do it for cheaper, right? That's just how
Hmm.
this works. No matter how far away you're, what's the word? Exporting the work. Eventually,
Yeah,
someone is going to be willing to do it, right? But
yep.
ultimately, I just feel like you should look yourself in the mirror a little bit and contemplate whether or not doing that is the right thing to do. Because at the end of the day, if you do hope to get to a position where you're actually in the guild or a part of the
Hmm.
guild and are looking for writers to get a better piece of the pie or something like that, you're basically actively shooting yourself in the foot by saying, I'm going to take advantage of this, let's call it what it is, of corporations taking advantage of their employees by being a pick me and being like, okay, well, you're not going to pay them, I'll do whatever you want on the for a quarter on the dollar. And
Yeah.
ultimately, why, like, at the end of the day, everybody got to eat. So what you said is
Hmm.
100% correct. You can't necessarily even knock those people that are doing that, but there is an ethical concern there, right, on whether or not
Yeah.
yeah, you're doing the right thing for yourself, but are you doing the right thing for the industry and for the future and your future projects that you may work on? Probably not. So I don't
Yeah,
know, man. There's so many different layers and levels to this, and I think anyone in Hollywood that is not in solidarity with the WGA just looks like an absolute like
oh,
scum
for
of the
sure.
earth, right? Because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, if you're not gonna stand in solidarity with the people that largely make this whole shit run, despite not having any of the credit, right? Like, name me a famous writer. I'll wait. I don't know any. I don't know, not
uh,
one.
well, for one, like on top of my head, I know Larry David and Jordan Peele, like those guys.
That's
Um,
fair.
but to be
But those are
honest,
people who do other roles too, right? Like, I
yeah,
mean, like,
yeah, yeah,
give me a
yeah.
writer. That's
Oh,
a writer.
strictly writer? Yeah, no,
They don't exist. Yeah, and
I
I'm
can't
pretty
tell you.
sure it's because of all of these practices, right? And
Oh, for
keeping
sure,
them in this lane. So
for sure.
hopefully if things go the way the WGA is hoping that they go, that maybe things like that do become more solidified, right? You are able to
Yeah,
find yourself in sort of a higher demand if what you're doing is clearly coming across that kind of way. So
I will say though, the last strike that we had, I think out of that was born was the reality TV industry was born, right?
hmm
If that same approach happens with this strike, the one of the great areas for these writers to kind of like get a get their hands on different things and do different things in different ways. Well, not writers, production companies to further their work is to partner with podcasts, right? So you're not like you would be able to podcasts would be able to lease their shows to these networks that don't have any material to put on, right?
hmm
That would be a great way for a lot of podcasters to even get in and take advantage of this thing. Like, say for example, like what we do with the sideline guys. I'm telling you right now, if ESPN, if any of the like any of those shows stop running and they wanted to bring TSG on, lease it, hell yeah, we're taking
yes,
advantage of that.
sir.
Hell yeah, because why not? Because why not, right? I think again at the end of the day, this is like survival of the fittest.
hmm
Who's ever able to take advantage of this time? This is almost to me. This almost feels like the pandemic. If you're not doing work during this moment, by the time it's over, like the
hmm
pandemic happened and the lockdown was going on. You know, a lot of people decided, hey, we're gonna lock in and do this work. And then on the back end, it's like, hey, once we came out of it, or when things get a little more relaxed, you see you have this, that, and the other built up to do, more. And that's what I kind of like feel like this moment is. Like this is a moment for people to lock in and go for it. Find out where you can take advantage of this and go for it. Right? That makes sense to me. You know, so yeah, I stand with the writers, but hey, opportunity is out there, baby.
Yes, sir. Keep your eye out. Who knows? You might be able to find yourself undercutting the WGA, but hey,
Yeah.
still try to fight on the back end for your people. All right.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure.
good luck to everyone that is all a part of that, and I hope that we get some good news on this front. But something we'll definitely be keeping an eye on moving forward and mentioning, I'm sure, throughout the year in Realish. But
Oh, for
with
sure.
that all being said, really excited, man. Really excited to get into our feature presentation. We're going to take a little break and we'll be right back.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Dwayne from Past the Ox and Life's a Botch podcast. I'm coming to you with a real dope advertisement if you got a moment. Can we do that? Peep this. Yo, you tired of that uncomfortable feeling with your undergarments? You know what I'm talking about. Like, literally having to adjust so it gets real comfortable in between the real safe space. Or maybe just wedgies from just going underneath, you know what I mean? All that. Let's keep it in 100. Y'all know how I'm feeling. Y'all know how that feeling goes. Well, I want to introduce to you the ultimate solution coming from the #1 premium and fit athletic wear just for you. I'm talking about none other than Champ Number One Boxers. Champ Number One Boxers is a black-owned underwear brand, okay? They literally specify in giving you the most top-notch, high-quality, premium, adjustable, and fittable, and totally comfortable undergarment wear that is just for you. Not only is it something that you can wear, feel good in, feel confident in, and love, but it's also high quality, feels good, and most importantly, it is definitely fashionable, okay? Comes in a different, wide variety of so many different styles and themes to these undergarments. Something to make you look good, feel good, and swag real good in the process, all right? So, again, did I get to mention that this is also a black-owned brand? It's a black-owned brand, y'all, so if nothing else, definitely go support that 100%. So, what I want to do is I want to tell you, head on over to OTS Media Co. on all social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. If you go over, you click the link in the bios, it'll take you straight to the Champ Number One Boxers website. You can check out all their styles, you can check out their bundle deals, you can check out why this brand exists, what it's all about, and trust me when I say you do not want to miss out on the types of opportunities going on right now on the site. Champ Number One Boxers. Make sure you do it for the champ in your life if you ain't already doing it for yourself, champ. All right? Champ Number One Boxers. Make sure you go cop those. All right? All right.
We are back with our feature presentation, obviously The Godfather, where Don Vito Corleone, the head of a mafia family, decides to hand over his empire to his youngest son, Michael. However, his decision ultimately puts the lives of his loved ones in grave danger. So I love that that's a really good way, IMDb, shout out to IMDb, to kick off the conversation. But with the way the movie plays out, right, you wouldn't know that that's what the movie's about until you're about 2 hours in, right? So I just kind of want to look at it from like a viewer's perspective and kind of break down these different scenes as we're going along. So just starting off early on, first impressions, right? Like this movie was shot in I was about to say 1972. So that's when this movie came out. This movie is insanely ahead of its time, like insanely. Like every time I watch it, I'm genuinely surprised at how well done it is. Because I feel like it's rare to have a movie on this level, period. But then when you consider it was in the 70s, it's actually mind blowing. But just to kick things off, right? We start at Don Vito's daughter's wedding, and that's the beginning sort of to the family dynamics and everyone that's a part of this Corleone family. And I just want to start off by saying I love that whole, like the whole wedding scene in general, because you get so much information at once, but you're also almost a part of the audience, right? We've all been there in these wedding scenarios. The way that a lot of these scenes are shot, you really feel like you're there sort of experiencing it for the first time too. And it cues you in a lot on the responsibilities of the Don and all the different people that are sort of dependent and foot soldiers for him. You also get a dynamic of sort of the Italian culture and where they are at this place, and sort of how, for lack of better words, they're sort of moving together in solidarity, right? It's not good luck getting in and penetrating that bubble if you're outside of it, right? So I mean, they even make mention there about how like so I'm just gonna go into this, right? Because I kind of was gonna shade this a little bit, but I think this theme of Michael's character and how he develops throughout the movie is really important for this. I love the way they do this, right? And how it contrasts to the end of the movie. Because this in this scene, first of all, he's not even there on time. He's late. And that's a big point of contention, and something that is made like very clear. They were actually about to take a family photo, and then the Godfather walks away disgusted and is like, "Get me when he's here. Come and get me when he's here." So he shows up late with his white girlfriend at the time. Okay, shout out I mean, she catches all the strays in this film.
She does.
But I mean, there isn't much depth to her character, but shout out to her for breaking these barriers, right? So somebody has to do it, as someone who's in a a relationship where maybe not everyone's used to seeing a Puerto Rican fella around. I can feel her. I can feel her entirely. But I thought one of the best decisions of this entire thing, in my opinion, was they had Michael show up in his uniform from the army, right? And why I think that's so important is obviously as things go later on, he becomes more entrenched in the family. But at this point, he's sort of keeping himself at arm's length on purpose. It almost feels
Oh
like
yeah.
he doesn't want to be involved at all,
Yeah.
and even downplays his involvement with his girlfriend,
Yeah.
by trying to make the point like, hey, this is what they do, but it's not what I do. It's not what
Yeah.
we do. It's what they do.
Yeah.
So I just want to, once again, I'm setting the stage with a lot of different talking
Go
points
ahead.
here. But what did you think about sort of the opening sequence and what caught your eye as a viewer?
So I'm gonna be completely honest with you, bro. This watching this again for this discussion felt like I was watching this movie for the first time because I haven't seen The Godfather in so long. It's been so long. It felt like I was kind of like being introduced into this world again for the first time. So yeah, I knew that and I remember that the wedding scene was lengthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it actually felt like, you know how when you go to a wedding, it's long
Yep.
and drawn out. That's exactly how that first portion of the film is where it's like it's long and drawn out, and you feel like you said, you feel like you're a part of the wedding, and you feel like you're actually there and celebrating, and kind of like a fly on the wall type of situation. um to be honest, I love um how Michael's introduced, because it kind of like, it'd be something we talk about when we discuss the third film, but it 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 sets that stage for um how much he does not want this life.
Mm-hmm.
How and even like later in the film, uh uh Don Corleone told him, I didn't want this for you. I wanted you to be like a senator or a governor, something like that. Which I'm assuming that was the path that he was on. But this business, this family life, it brought him in, and you could see in the beginning how innocent he actually was, and it was not just in how he was dressed, but his mannerisms and everything. He looked childlike, a grown man, but he looked childlike, as if like his family, he and his family are like have nothing to do with each other, right? And it's while you're talking about how he was like at an arm's length, it's like Don Corleone put him at another arm's length too. It's like they were both pushing away from each other to make sure that this does not touch him, right? And I love how in the beginning you're seeing, yeah, he's late, he's separated. He and Kay are like at a different table by themselves. They're secluded. They're away from everybody else, and that's what I found very interesting about that first portion of the film is I don't remember seeing anybody else sitting by themselves, like at a table.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was at a group table, even like people that that one guy didn't want to be photographed, stuff like that. Like everybody is together and they're separated. They're like, it's almost like if you're at a restaurant, like being sat when they sit you down, they take you to the worst table, right? Like by the bathroom or by the kitchen, right? Like you're not seen, and that's how they were. And I think that sets the stage perfectly for how Michael's character then develops to what we see at the end, because he is so far removed from this. Like you see him, even later, like after that wedding, shopping with Kay for Christmas, and they're just gallivanting through New York, and kissing each other, and just having a good time. Like you can see how different he is in the beginning of the movie from the end. So yeah, I love that. I love that.
Definitely. And my favorite part about the beginning too is just setting the stage with who these people are, right? You got Luca
Mhm.
Brasi in the back talking to himself, and then Kay's noticing like that. Hey, babe, that guy's over there tweaking. Like, is he
Yeah.
supposed to be here? Like, is he in the right place? And then
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, he definitely is. So,
Yeah.
and then of course Sonny, where you was talking about where he didn't want to be photographed. Michael's brother ends up
Mhm.
breaking the dude's camera like in the middle
Yeah.
of the thing, and obviously nobody's what they're gonna tell you. This is your house, right? Technically, right? So what they're gonna
Yeah.
tell you, but at the same time, it's just hilarious to see these different people, right? Very much set in stone in who they are, being
Mhm.
themselves in
Yeah.
this moment together, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that really people don't understand how hard that is to achieve as far as character development.
Mhm.
I think especially today's day and age, there's a lot of inconsistent characters where they end up
Oh
doing
yeah.
things towards the end where it's like I don't think that's who you are, bro.
Yeah.
There's no issues like that at all in this film, which I love. But obviously, like you mentioned, you're there for about 40 minutes, right? And then
Yeah.
and then things pick up extremely fast versus you're basically never in the same place for that long again until
Yes.
basically never literally the rest of the movie is at a
Yeah.
completely different level of pacing, which I love as well. So things start to pick
Yeah.
up a little bit. I think the big turning point that obviously needs to be mentioned is getting to understand the different dynamics between the different families, right? So the Corleone
Yeah.
family is the one that the Godfather is obviously the head of, and then there's other families, the Tartaglias, there's a whole bunch of different names, right?
Mhm.
That we get slowly introduced to, but also through conflict, like seeing Luca Brasi get hit and seeing an attempted hit on Vito Corleone's life, um, where we get to see how these different families are positioned, right? And how there's always jockeying for the head position, so to speak, to be the
Yeah.
one that everyone is sort of checking in with, so to speak. But one thing I got to mention about the scene, right? It's important because this comes across throughout the entire movie. But right before in the wedding, they show many times oranges around Vito, and
Yes. Yes.
and throughout the entire film, whenever seemingly whenever someone's gonna die, right? Earlier on in that
Mhm.
movie, you see them around oranges in some capacity, which is a
Mhm.
small detail that I love very much because obviously you're foreshadowing, but you wouldn't know that until you're watching the movie, right? Until you finish the
Yeah.
movie. But
Yeah.
when you go back and you get to watch it again, you're like, holy shit, they really made a point to do this in a way that
Mhm.
it isn't really in your face. But one of my favorite ones was one of the guys that actually ended up double crossing the family is like playing with an orange as if it's an apple, like he's gonna eat it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then later on, we obviously see him pass away. So, really small, subtle thing, right? But
I
just so
didn't
well
pick up
done
on
as far
that.
as execution.
I did not pick up on that.
Uh,
That's good. Wow.
right and it always is foreshadowing that, like right
Oh
before when they
wow.
show the market, you see that's what they show first, and then they come out, you see the rest of what's there, and then you see the
Mhm.
car come up, and then everything sort of happens. um and then the fact that he survived that too, and I also love that that's the way that Michael gets sort of forced into this position, right? Because
Yeah.
they tried to kill his father. His father, at this point, to what everyone's knowledge is, he's probably gonna die. Like everyone thinks
Right.
he's dead, even though he's
Yeah.
still alive. Everyone is sort of anticipating the worst because you get shot
Yeah.
5 times as someone who's elderly already. Not a good place to be, obviously, but he ends up
Close
surviving that.
range too.
Oh, real close range. Yeah, that I love that the way he fell too. Like that scene is
Oh,
so
bro.
well done, so well done.
Bro, that was Marlon Brando did an amazing job with that because I forgot he got shot. so I was sitting there watching. I was like, oh snap! Like
Mhm.
I wanted to call him 50 Cent, bro. Like because there's no way.
Many men was playing as this
Yeah.
happened, literally. Oh
Well,
man.
sorry, I interrupted you though, man. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I love that. I love that because you're so right, literally. And then you can hit him with the Let me shut the fuck up. I'm not even gonna do it. I was like, Sonny got hit up like I did, but he
Yeah.
ain't here no more. Nah, let me stop. That's his son, though. That's his son. That's not an op. You feel me? Anyway. Um, so yeah, as far as that sort of
Yeah, man.
leveling up moment for Michael, where you see that character development, you see him go from this being real, right? His family situation is always real to him, but it's also very real to him that he wants to set his own path, that he doesn't want to be necessarily thought of as a follower in that way. And
Right.
I think he goes about this on his own terms too, because this isn't
Mhm.
something that was asked of him. This was his idea. This was something
Right.
that he thought he almost, you could tell he kind of felt like he owed to his father, which
Right.
I thought was once again just such a great way to key us into who Michael is and what motivates him and how he got to this point.
Mhm.
So eventually, obviously, there's a lot of things that happen in between, right? But the main sort of thread is the assassination attempt, followed by the planning and everything that goes into now the get back, right? We
Right.
can't just leave it like this after they tried to kill what is the most important person in our family.
Mhm.
We got to figure things out on our own, right? And then so this leads to a very important part which we're going to get to, but I think this is also important to mention because this ends up wrapping things up as well. But Michael's sister and her relationship with her husband, how do you, yeah, please, I'm going to just throw to you off of that. So how do you feel as far as the way they introduced it and then the way everyone sort of reacts in response?
So Connie, I honestly felt bad for Connie. Connie was like, she was a severe afterthought, like for everyone.
Yeah.
Like you
Even the
forget, like
story,
that
you
was,
could argue, even in the grand
yeah,
scheme of the story.
yeah. Like think about it. Like at the beginning of the film, it's her wedding. It is actually her wedding, and even in the wedding, she's not a major figure, right? The major figure at her own wedding was her dad, Don Corleone. That is the guy. That is the center of attention, right? And so like that set the stage for how the how her story arc was gonna go, because it's like she, even when there was conflict between her and her husband, you could see the family was like staying in line, like even her mom was told Sonny, don't get in their business, leave that alone,
Mhm.
right? Even like he told his wife to shut up in front of her family, and she said to Sonny, leave that alone,
Yeah.
right? And that kind of struck me odd, but it's like you also have to think of the time which we're talking about too, because this was like, if I'm not mistaken, this
50s.
was the 50s. Yeah, so it's a different time and different era we're kind of evaluating right now. But um, poor Connie, bro, poor Connie. I like, I will say, as a brother that has a sister, the way Sonny showed up to defend his sister, to when he saw that she got punched, and went and took old boy out, like I loved it. The fight choreography itself was slow and horrible, but he saw that one punch, didn't
I was
even
going to say we got to
wasn't
talk
even
about this
close.
because it's infamous. At this point, it is infamous. I love that scene because it's so well done and so poorly done
Yeah,
at the same
at the
time.
same
Like it
time.
literally. Um, I love the
Yeah,
approach, right? Like if it definitely feels like you're looking out your window watching the fight,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like you're
Oh, for
not there
sure,
with him, but it
for
feels
sure.
like you see the whole thing sort of play out, and he just
Yeah,
smokes him right in the middle of the street, hits him with like a 9-piece
yeah.
combo. He's laid out on the floor, just getting kneed, and then that's when the terrible punch comes in where. They literally show him get hit and then he moves his head the opposite direction of like where it should have went,
Yeah.
and it somehow still made it to the final cut. Shout out to that, but
And yeah, I mean, there was one punch he threw that missed him like that. It was horrible. And he, of course, he reacted because you're acting, right?
mm-hmm,
That was horrible. But I understood it, because it's like,
mm-hmm.
anybody touches my sister, bro, like we are going to war. And I
For
agree
sure.
with that. I agree with that mentality, man. So I love that. But that's like the that is the highest point where Connie was like, how should I put this? That's the only time you see where she's like put as a priority.
Hmm.
Any other time in the film, she is an afterthought. That's the
Yeah,
only time she was a priority.
that's
And
a really
like
good
I
point.
get it. I get it. But at the same time, it's like, dog, bro.
Hmm.
Like she would you really think, and the funny thing about this is that they explained that Tom wasn't even a blood relative, right? He was
Yeah,
he was
Tommy
a
is
kid.
an orphan.
Yeah, he's a kid that Sonny brought in, that was lost, that he met, and he's been with the family since they were kids. And it seems as if a kid that's not even a blood relative got more priority than Connie did. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? That's wild when you think about that.
For sure. That's a
But
really good point. I never even really thought about that dynamic, right? Because you're just sort
yeah,
of living and dying with these characters. That's a really good point. Even even her like scenes where you see her being abused, like it's not even necessarily for her. It's more so to
right.
establish what's going on and how this will become impactful later. And then just to bring the full circle close, right?
Hmm.
To one of my favorite moments in the entire film. Not because of what happened, but just because the way it was shot and everything, um, where that becomes a big part of sort of uh, Michael's transition into the Godfather, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
after the Don gets shot and he's in recovery, from that point on, um, Michael. So let me just finish what I'm saying here, and then I'll give the rest of the exposition. But basically, Michael ends up in a position where he needs to not only respond to that situation, right, but a whole bunch of different loose ends in the family, so to speak, when he's finally becoming the Godfather himself, and it's
Mhm.
symbolized as well, which I think is so cool, of him actually becoming a Godfather, where he is Connie's son, right, son, or was it daughter?
Son, I think it was a daughter. Well, yeah, I think it was a daughter.
Okay. But
Yeah,
Connie's child's godfather,
yeah.
he's there at the ceremony. And then as they're there at the ceremony, there's a whole bunch of other things going on in the background that we know as an audience, but obviously nobody knows until the end what is exactly happening in that moment. But just such a really cool moment to see sort of full circle. Like we saw her being abused to this extent, and why that was enough of a reason for him to respond in kind.
Right.
And all these things sort of add up too, because it wasn't just because um he beat Connie that he got killed. It was
Right.
because after that whole situation happened where Sonny beat the shit out of him. I don't even know his name. Connie's husband is what we're gonna refer to him as.
Carlo. Carlo.
Carlo, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like we don't even, it's kind of an afterthought, like who he
Yeah.
is. It's just important why he's like sort of looked at in that way by the family. And it comes full circle because we obviously see Sonny get murdered later on, and it's entirely related to that moment, to when he beat Carlo, and Carlo got offered from another family to take out Sonny. And that was such a dramatic moment because it really came out of nowhere, right? It wasn't something that anyone was expecting. I mean, we knew he was a hothead and he acted accordingly, right? So something was gonna come around at some point. But still, even watching it again, I was just like, damn, like that was really sudden. Like there was no like sort of cue into why it was happening
Yeah.
until you find out later that that's why Michael ends up killing Carlo in that sort of end montage scene. Um, doesn't do it himself, but gets someone to do it, of course.
Yeah.
Um, and then the idea of like, I'm not even doing this because of what, like you were already pushing it, but you crossed the line because you actually brought family into this now. Like it isn't even
Right.
about, shout out to Fast and the Furious. Like it isn't even about um like which is fucked up to think of, but this is the reality of how it was in the 50s, right? It's not about the solidarity of that's my sister and this is how you what you did to fuck up, but now you've made it more personal because now you've literally took away a family member because
Yeah.
of their personal interactions with you.
Yeah.
Um and in a way that's very like not noble. If somebody beats your ass and then you're gonna get your lick back and you don't even do it yourself, like what is that? Like I don't
It's cowardice, bro. It's
literally.
cowardice. One thing that I thought about though, I was kind of curious as to what your thoughts were on this. Sonny was being set up to take over the family, right? Initially.
Yep.
One, how different do you think things would have been had he been able to do that? And two, do you think that do you think that he would be as strategic? Because, like, of course, we know the whole trilogy, right? So, and if you're watching this, I'm assuming you know the whole trilogy. I'm not going to get into it, in depth.
Mhm.
But do you think he would be as strategic as Michael is?
I mean, the easy answer 100% is no, right? Like the
Yeah,
easy answer
yeah,
is no. He's a hothead
yeah,
and he's going to
yeah.
move how he wants to move. And I think we see a little bit more of that too, right? In the other movies as well. It's not just this one. But
Hmm.
I really like that point too, because it's almost like Tom Egan wasn't even, they were setting up Tom Egan to be consigliere, but you're not the Godfather. You're sort of the
Right.
right hand and being the person to sort of what's the word,
Advice.
counsel, yeah,
Yeah.
be his counsel in that way. And it's cool that they set it up that way too, because of the sort of the ice to the fire, right? Like he's Tom Egan's a
Right.
very composed individual, and to have him be that foil to this hothead that is Sonny, natural fit in that way. But I even felt like when Michael was getting ready to do the hit and then obviously go away to Italy for a while to avoid the smoke of that whole thing.
Hmm.
Even then, you could tell, like when they're in these conversations, that Sonny's willing to do things that you probably shouldn't be willing to do in a moment
Right.
like this. And obviously, Michael's planning this anyway. So as far as him taking the lead, there weren't even discussions on like Sonny saying this is what we should do. Michael's like, this is what I'm gonna do, and then we'll figure
Right.
out from there.
Right.
Um, but in those moments, it very much felt like everyone was looking to Sonny and not to Michael. So that's why I always thought it
Right.
was really cool to see him step up in his own skin and say,
Yeah.
like, I'm not asking y'all if I could do this. Like this is
Yeah.
what we're gonna do, and this is how we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And that moment honestly felt like where that power was shifted. We didn't even have to see Sonny get killed in the course of this film in order to know that there was a more apparent heir to the throne.
Yeah. I mean, you can see like when and I think the first moment that I actually noticed the setup of Mike was when they were preparing for that hit, right? So Michael goes from just like walking around the room to like and like being like in the shadows type of thing in a corner of the room or whatever and kind of like listening to sitting down. And like when he sits down with like where he's commanding, like he commands your attention. So like what I kind of like found interesting was like even the way that some of the shots were set up. Michael is kind of like in a corner beginning of the movie or whatever. But as it progresses, you see he's more center of the frame, right? Like he's commanding your attention. Even like when he's not trying to, right? It's just the presence. And Sonny is then shifted from kind of like center of attention to fly on the wall type of thing. Even before Michael actually takes over, um, because when he was planning out this, they were planning out this hit. You see, he's in his seat. He's like, "Oh, we're gonna do X, Y, Z," and everybody's like laughing, but it's like, nah, this is what we're gonna do. They do it, and when he leaves America and goes over to Italy, you can see he's in command of his people over there, right? Like he's not this loud, boisterous presence, sort of like his dad, right? Where it's a a subdued, almost like a reverential type of presence, right? And it's like he's not loud, he's not demonstrative or anything like that. He's just there, and with him being there, like your attention is drawn to him somehow, some way, and you can see where he's kind of like fine tuning his leadership skills over there, and even like when he met Apollonia, right? Like they go to talk to this man and didn't know that was her dad,
Mhm.
and he sets the record straight. Like, hey, listen, I'm not trying to disrespect you, but I'm interested in your daughter, right? And it's like that's what I want.
Mhm.
I'll get to know her in front of you guys. Like we can do this respectfully, but that's what I want, and that's what he got. Right? It was a very
Mhm.
short marriage, but that's what he got.
For sure. And I love that you brought us here too, because this is one of my favorite parts of the film, and this is the part of the film that, believe it or not, gets the most hate, where people are like, man, you lost me here because it got boring, it got slow, I didn't
Oh,
understand why they were showing Michael doing these things. And it's like, bro, you lost
yeah,
because
yeah.
literally it like you said, it's a big part of that character development of stepping into being this leader, right? But also, um I think it really shows the way he looks at it as like a collaboration. Like this isn't
Right,
I'm taking things and then you're left to figure out how you're going to deal with that. Like this is,
right.
we are going to talk about what I want and I'll figure out what you want and we'll
Hmm.
figure out how that'll work moving forward. And I think that's really key to being a good leader in any profession, but
Hmm.
especially with everything he has going on, right? There's a give and take always. So I
Yep.
love seeing that. And then of course just the character development of seeing him in Italy and the differences of like when they would speak and it's when he would speak in Italian versus speak in English,
Hmm.
and the ways you sort of and this is what I like about the movie too. I know obviously we're in a different time and era now, which is very important, why a lot of these things aren't necessarily on the forefront of our vocabulary today. But it's very, very like it is very on point to what the times would have been and how these people would have reacted. Like one of my favorite lines of the whole film was when Tom Egan was talking to one of the heads from a different the movie studio, the Walt, I believe his name
Yes.
was. Obviously a nod to Walt Disney, but he was talking to him and he was telling him like, "Oh, I'm part German, but I'm like basically adopted Italian. Like I'm not even really Italian." And then he called him like some German slur and then like a Mick
Yeah.
at the end, like like literally
Yeah.
right offhand immediately.
Yeah.
And that wit and banter, even though obviously that's not the world we live in today, right? It's
Yeah.
so true to the time, but also very clever and really brings out another aspect that I think really lets this movie shine is like the authenticity of these characters in this time period. Like from what I read, there's so many stories of how a lot of these scenes were like improvised or weren't necessarily told to be done a certain way, but the
Right.
characters felt sort of the dynamic. And even on set, like Francis Ford Coppola wanted them when he was casting to be able to be in character the entire time, to not break character at all, so that
Right.
the family ties, right, the hierarchy, so to speak, is evident, and you would act in according to those things when you're on screen, and that really comes across. Like one of my favorite stories, and once again we're jumping back and forth here, but I don't care. One
Hey,
of
it
my
is what it
favorite
is.
stories is Luca Brasi's character and how we see him there, sort of
Yes.
reciting his lines that he's gonna speak to Don Vito later, and he's sort of making sure he gets it right. Funny enough, that part of him rehearsing his lines wasn't in the script at all. It ended up
Oh
being
wow.
shot after, because when they shot the scene with Luca Brasi's character and Vito's character, um, the actual actor was nervous and was stuttering that way. And when
Oh.
he saw that, he was like, no, this is fine, like leave this just like this, we'll just add that part later to show like that fear and stuff. So that's such a cool excerpt
Yo.
there. But
That's amazing.
yeah, literally
Because you could
they,
feel how awkward it was. Like, Don Vito was looking at him just like, what? Like, spit it out, bro. Like, come on. And like I felt very awkward in that moment, but I was like, like it's an acting. That's very well done.
Mhm.
Very well
And
done.
just such random like random shit. Like for example, I forgot.
Yeah.
I don't even know this character's name, right? But he's a part of the family. They just finished doing a hit, um, on somebody who betrayed the family. And then he goes, "Oh, he goes, leave the gun, but take the cannoli." Like there's the
Oh yeah,
cannoli
yeah.
in the car, like,
Yeah.
so random and insignificant. But like moments like that live on just because of how good they are. So another just big A plus for me on this was how authentic everything was.
Yeah, nah, the feel of this movie is so authentic. And it's boisterous, right? It's like it you feel you can feel the power dynamics and honestly, like you could feel you tell me how you interpreted this, but like you can see the strength of Don Vito beginning of the movie. And like, of course, after he got shot, hey man, what dude was like 60, 70 years old, you get shot 5 times, like you live through that, it ain't gonna be the same, right? But how weak he appeared physically, but that reverence was still there. Like everybody was like kind of like hesitant with switching to Mike as the head of the family. Like, hey man, like I get that he's the head, but I need your approval,
Mhm.
right? And when that took place, I didn't think about this until now, but when that whole thing took place, do you see how different Mike responded to that versus how Sonny would have responded? Because if anybody had done that to Sonny would have, like you said, he's a hothead. The way he would have responded to that would have been a lot different than Michael did. Michael was just like he was patient. It was like I get that there's a transitional period and people have to get used to me and everything like that, but this is how we're gonna do it. And there's no questions asked. Like you may not know all the answers that you need right now. Like you got a lot of questions you need answered, but this is all the information you didn't know right now. Period. And his dad backed him up, like, hey, Michael's the head of the family right now. So what he
Yep.
says goes.
Play your position. Play your
Play your
position.
position.
Literally.
Yeah. And I love how that was shown because yeah, again, like if Sonny was over this and Tom alluded to this after Vito was back at home, and the guys are coming down the stairs. Uh, Tom and Sonny were having a conversation, and Tom was telling him like, "Hey, your reputation is preceding you, man. Like you're too hot headed. Like slow down and think about X, Y, Z. And you got someone that is being looked at as the advisor to the Godfather, right?
Mhm.
You're gonna talk to him any old type of way and disrespect him, and this is technically your brother, right? Like the way he shot Tom down so bad, the difference between that moment and when Michael was explaining to Tom what his position is going to be with him as the head of the family, Michael was like, "Hey, listen, it's no slight on you, and I mean no disrespect in this way, but if anybody's going to advise me, it's going to be my dad. He's the best to advise me, and we need you to do X, Y, Z." And it wasn't he was like in just one tone. He didn't get too high, didn't get too low. He was just like commanding respect. Again, this is what we're gonna do, right? And it was just interesting to see the dynamic between Michael and Sonny. Like we got a glimpse of Sonny as the head of the family, and how chaotic and rushed it was, and he was starting battles that didn't need to be started, right?
Mhm.
But with Michael there, it was like he's putting out fires and quietly doing it. Like he's like again, it's the same thing. Like real G's moving silence. That was him. Like he's It's like, hey, we're gonna do this and be strategic about it, man. We're gonna get the result we want, but we're gonna be strategic about it, and the way that he operated with Carlo toward the end of the movie, where it's like, hey, like we know you did this with Sonny, and instead of just like like being all loud and boisterous, he took a chair and sat right next to Carlo, and was just like, hey, don't lie. Like, there's no need for
Who
you to
did it?
lie.
Who did it? Yeah, what family? Who gave you the offer?
Yeah. And he spilled his guts out,
Because he
right?
was caught. He was caught, right?
It was
I
just
love
it was
that. I
just
love that scene.
it's amazing to see the dynamic between those two, and they're brothers, right? It's amazing. Actually, all of them.
Fredo too. Yeah.
Fredo was a wild boy.
Facts.
Like, Fredo's wild, Sonny is wild, but Sonny is like, I don't care. Fredo is like wild, but he's like,
I'm trying to get lit.
scared. Yeah, he's like,
Facts.
I'm like, leave me out of it. Like,
Facts. I'm
I
trying
don't
to
want
clap.
to.
That's all I want.
Yeah. He wanted to clap some cheeks. That's what he want. Like, he was out there. Fredo was out there, bro. And the difference between Fredo, Sonny, Michael, and Tom, like, all four of them were so different. So different, but it's like it's interesting to see that Michael had more in common with Tom, in terms of like, this is how we're going to operate. We're going to be strategic about this thing, and just be quiet. Like, we're not going to draw attention to ourselves. We're going to do XYZ. It was almost like, you remember American Gangster, when Frank took over and he was like telling, hey, look, we're not being loud. You need to take the loud suits off and all that stuff. Like, just being strategic, right? That's just how it was. And I love this. I love this film, man, because like it takes you back to where how gangster films, mob films actually were. Right, and the true essence of them, and how they connect with different families and all this. I love this movie.
Yeah, man.
It's
There's
just,
so many moments where you really are hanging on every word, and you can't
yeah,
believe the approach. Like, you mentioned Fredo, so I got to mention this because this is one of my favorite
please.
scenes in the movie too. But obviously, there's another famous Fredo scene I'm sure we'll get to when we do Godfather 2. But
Yeah.
my number one favorite interaction between them in this one was that scene with Mo Green and the casino and everything that was going on, where he's defending Mo Green. Shout out Mean Joe Green. Shout out Mean Joe Green. I love that he was in this movie as well. And obviously the story too. I have the book, by the way, Mario Puzo's The Godfather. I want to read it now because I have it. I have it right on this shelf behind me, but haven't gotten to read it yet. So I definitely want to check it out now. But anyway, specifically, and I mentioned that because side note, I got a couple of these side notes, but side note, Francis Ford Coppola mentioned that the reason why he had it written as specifically like Mario Puzo's The Godfather is because of how accurately it was depicted in the screenplay versus the book. So that's why I'm really excited to read the book to get more context, because I'm sure they couldn't fit everything in there, right? But great interaction between Fredo and Michael in this one was during that whole scene with Mo Green, and he's saying basically like, yeah, you can't cut him out, like he's doing this or this for the casino business or whatever. And he shuts that down quickly and then ends up basically telling Mo like, either you're gonna do what you got to do, or we're gonna have to figure it out. And Mo's like, I'm just gonna do what I got to do. And then he takes Fredo to the side and very calm, doesn't get in his face, doesn't scream at him, but tells him, he's like, this is the last time you side against your family like that again. Like this is the last time. That shit is like just setting the story entirely straight in front of everyone. Like everyone saw that shit. And the fact that I mean, just think of that dynamic, right? This is your employer. This is someone that you're showing up to work for tomorrow. Mo Green. So it makes sense why he's trying to vouch for him in that way. But Michael made it very clear, hey, you wouldn't even have this fucking job if we didn't place you here. So get it together.
Yeah, man. Nah, I love that. And it's interesting because again, you see how what Fredo's demeanor is, right? Like, he almost reminds me of which is kind of weird to say this, but he reminds me of a drug addict. right? How sporadic he is, and you know,
Selfish too. Very selfish. Yep.
selfish, yeah, but also how he doesn't like operate in logic with his decisions. It's just like, this is how I feel. But the reason why I'm saying bring about the addict is because, like, he's kind of he is an addict in a way. Like, he's addicted to his lifestyle of just being out there and just doing whatever he wants without regard to the family. And of course, it's in Vegas, right? So he's out in Vegas and doing his thing. He don't care. He don't care. But like, when they're there, like, his, like, because of course, like he when Michael first got there, like, he set up the room where it's just all these women and all, like, everyone's
Trying to
there.
impress. Yeah.
He's trying to impress his brother, but at the same time, it's like, Michael's like, we about business, bro.
Wrap
We
this
about
shit up.
business.
And then he's like, get out of here, get out of here.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
but
Yeah, that seems
it's like
great.
he's got this fake, like, Fredo, like, has this kind of like pseudo power, right? It's like he feels like he's got power based off his family's name, but it's not there. Like, he has no power. He has no real power. And Michael set him straight. Michael set him straight. Because we're gonna see this again come up. This theme come up where he's got issues with Fredo. Right? So, like, I'm so looking forward to this, man. I like, this is a great movie.
Literally.
This is
Let
a
me
great
bring
movie.
it home because I just wanted to
Please.
wax poetic on the closing scene, right? We already touched
Yes,
on it a
please.
little bit,
Yeah.
but first of all, the baptism, fucking gorgeous. I love the way they shot
Yes.
that church, because if you have gone to extravagant churches like this, you understand just how much light. There's so much light, and
Yes.
they made sure to keep it as dark as possible to match the rest of the
Yeah.
film, which I fucking loved. Side note, to continue off of that, the lighting in this film is impeccable when you consider it's also being shot on film.
Yes.
All the dark that has been able to be pumped in there while never feeling like you can't see what's going on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big criticism about filmmaking today, where everything just feels dark, and sometimes you kind of feel like you're lost a little bit in the minutia.
Yeah.
Everything is dark in this film, even during the day. Like, they find a way to get the contrast in, which I personally love, right? But despite that, it never is too dark that you don't know who you're looking at, you don't know what you're looking at, and your
Right.
eye always is looking sort of where it needs to look. So I love that church opening scene where it's in the back, like behind a pew, right? You can't even necessarily see. They're just people there, right? But
Right.
they showed the huge, like, cavernous room, and then they cut away. No cuts in between to see the actual baptism just yet. They cut away to these different areas, right? Where all these different things are happening,
Yeah.
where these different people are getting hit or whatever. And whenever they establish those scenes of where those people are, it looks exactly the same, popped out like that. You see all these things,
Yes,
and then
it
it
does.
it inches his way back in, like cutting between. Great example when Mo Green gets shot, right? He gets shot through the glasses, and then right after that, the next one, this guy gets caught in the turnstiles. Like, all these different things, they have a thread that connects them, which I love as just a visual aspect of it, right? But
Yeah.
then when you consider, like, what that moment is, and the fact that he literally is becoming the Godfather on all fronts at the same time, just so well done. Like, the pacing to that, they took what was like a real life a minute of exposition, and they turned that into like a 5 minute montage where
Right.
you're
Right.
brought out. You're not even, most of the time, you're not even there at the baptism. You're
Right.
elsewhere. But that's the influence. That's where Michael is at all times, right? He's doing all
Yeah.
these different things through other people. And
Yeah.
while he's doing this one thing that's altruistic, um, doing this for Carlo and Connie, even though he knows he's gonna kill Carlo in a few, right after this. But I love too, even like after that, when they were doing that confrontation scene, and this the second time they told him that about Carlo. They're like, what? He's like, you think I'm gonna make you a widow on the day of your child's baptism? He knew exactly that he was gonna do that.
Yeah,
He knew
yeah,
exactly, but he still said it.
yeah,
And then most importantly, right, the best film, the best shot sequence in this film, in my opinion, comes to the end, right, where everyone now understands what happened in that moment. Because in the moment
yeah,
you're watching it, and everyone that's there doesn't know that these things are happening, but we as an audience do. Later
mhm,
on, when now everyone knows that Carlo's dead and all these other people, all these other dominoes has fell, right? This is the actual moment now, right? Where we've never, even when he was there, sort of doing these things and calling the shots, and everyone's listening to him, we never had
yeah,
a moment where he fully acknowledged that he was in. And this final scene was the
yes,
moment that he acknowledged he was in, and the way he did it, once again, just so true to him. So this montage finishes up, right, and now he's back at home in the same spot that we saw Vito Corleone during the wedding, right?
hmm,
And now Connie comes in hysterical, and she's so like, I love that part too, because she's so beside herself that it's like she doesn't even know how to react. She can't even like
yeah,
be fully aggressive like she will want to. She can't even fully like process what happened. She just can't believe it. And she's so angry. And Kay's there witnessing, right? And
hmm,
it's implied, right? You killed him because of whatever
hmm,
happened with the family. You killed my husband. Like, how could you do this? And she ends up running off. And then Kay has that moment with him where she asks, like, but did that really happen? And
yeah,
then immediately, instead of answering, instead of saying no, that didn't happen, he got pissed and
yeah,
showed, once again, we're back in the 50s, right? Showed that moment of, how dare you ever question me and what I'm doing, and sort of shut down that question at all.
yeah,
And then she stepped out of the room, which is so brilliant. I love that they did it this way. She stepped out of
yeah,
the room, and he's being framed by the door, right? So he is in it, literally. Like,
yeah,
you see, he is in it.
yeah,
And she asks again, and then he lies and says no. And she's outside that fucking door now. He is in the door. He is the Godfather,
yeah,
and he is just business as usual. He's not going to tell you, he's not going to extend you the truth just for the sake of it. But he knows that you know. But
yeah,
he's still going to hold up that space, so to speak. Brilliant. Like, just brilliantly done, the fact that they blocked it out that way, and then when she's finally there, she's outside looking in at him,
yeah.
and you could see full conviction. Like, even though he's lying,
Terrified.
full conviction. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She's terrified of what he's become, and I think at that moment you could tell as well, like, and maybe of course, with all art is subjective, right? So like, we can all get different meanings of different in different ways, but like the guy closing the door, as like he's shutting the door, they shoot back out at her, and it's just like it's sweeping across her face to close out the film. But it kind of showed me like this wave of emotion that was like she was being swept with emotion at the same time. Like it's like she's thinking about everything. Every like of course he lied about Carlo being killed, and about him actually being in, like you said, right? Like beginning of the film, he told her, I don't want to be a part of this. Now it's like everything is like coming back at once of just like lie after lie after lie after lie. Like this is what it is. This is who he is. He is the Godfather now. And it's a perfect way to close the film out because it's like that's it. Like that's it. It is what it is, right? You see him being like acknowledged, and in that moment, it's just jeez, man. Like she's just like, I just realized what he is,
Mhm.
and boom, close the door. It's an amazing way to close a film out, and especially for a trilogy, like it's not a cliffhanger, but it kind of is at the same time.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful film, man. This is where I think like filmmaking today kind of like I think with the way in the space that we're in, where we're talking about whether it's streaming or whether we're talking about the way things are recorded or whatever, it seems like there's like with a lot of projects, there's not enough thought that goes into it, into different elements and stuff like that. And this film is a perfect example of why that's filmmaking. That's filmmaking, you know. So I just enjoy this stuff, man. I enjoy that movie. That's a great movie. It was a great thing to see again, man. Because again, I told you I forgot a lot of the stuff that happened in this movie. So it's like watching it for the first time again. It's just like it's phenomenal.
For sure. And real quick, two side facts that I'm really excited to share because I just fucking love this movie.
Yeah.
Marlon Brando gets main billing, and he was in the movie for less than the total of an hour. And the movie's 3 hours. So actually in the movie for less than an hour and gets top billing.
Wow.
I love that though.
That's
Really
amazing.
speaks to the dynamic. And even when he wasn't there, he was
He
still
was
very
there.
much so there. Literally.
Yeah, yeah, you can
This
feel his
movie's great.
presence. Yeah, you can feel his presence, and like you were talking about Michael, like getting outraged with by Kay. That's the only time you see him lose control, and he quickly gained his composure back.
Yeah.
And lied to his wife, like, "Hey, I didn't do that."
I swear. Literally.
Yeah, she took it. She took it. It's like, all right, cool, we good. You know, I just it's just amazing to see this, man. I'm looking forward to part two because I know there's so much more that we're gonna be able to discuss and how much that's gonna tie into this, as well. So love it.
Whew. Man, I can't wait to get to the future ones as well. Is there any other random anecdotes or anything you want to add before we wrap this thing up here?
Nah, man. I will say I loved seeing how Vito died among the tomato garden. In that tomato garden. That was an extremely powerful scene too. I don't know, man. It's
So
just
sudden and beautiful, right? Almost poetic, right?
yeah,
Like he
yeah,
dude got shot 5 times, but he died running around with his grandson. Like
yeah. Like
like,
so random.
but also like speaks to him winning, right? Like
Yeah,
that's how you win as a mob
yeah,
boss, right? Like
yeah.
you didn't
He
go
went out
out
his
because you
way.
got shot. Exactly. You went out your
Yeah,
way. And
yeah.
and even the structure of the way those scenes play out, right? Like Michael was very much so the Godfather before Vito passed away. But
Oh, for
that
sure.
was the catalyst for the movie.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and it was crazy too, because I kept looking back at the time, like as I'm watching, because such a long movie. And once again, this is why I feel like people shit on this movie in general, because they're not willing to immerse themselves for 3 hours. If you're willing to
right.
immerse yourself for 3 hours, you will genuinely be surprised about multiple things. But one of the things that I was surprised about was just how short the ending of the film is. Like I'm looking and I'm like, holy shit, Vito hasn't even died, and I still got like I only have 20 minutes left. Like
Yeah,
like
yeah,
so much. They do such a good job of taking their time where they need to, but then
yeah.
also like not even like, for example, there was 2 years in the film that we
Right.
don't see anything that happens throughout any of those times. So once again, just so fucking well done, and a credit to filmmaking in general, but also like attention to detail and what that
Yeah.
does for the immersion of a film. Because you can't really like, nobody's aiming to make a 3 hour movie anymore. Like that
No,
is
no,
that
no,
is
no, no.
something that is entirely, like, if you're at 2 hours, you're kind of pushing it now.
Yeah.
um but I don't see how you cut this movie down, or if anything, I only see how you can make it longer. Like you can't cut this
Hmm.
down from what it was, and the fact that it's 3 hours is insane.
That's a good point because like there were times where like we're jumping years,
Yeah.
right?
And they don't tell
Like
you either.
they
You
don't tell
just
you.
see it.
Yeah, because the time between Michael in Italy where his wife was killed, blown up in that
I
car
still don't
was
know
that
who did that. Do you know?
the guy
Is that
the guy well so the guy that was walking out the gate, That's
Oh, it
how
was him
Michael
for
realized.
sure.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
it was him. I just don't know who sent him.
exactly. Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, so
Something to keep our on our mental for the next two ones
yeah,
we're watching. Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's gonna come back up again. But it was like the time span between that moment and him running into K, or not running into K, but finding K, actually showing and saying he's here. It was like a year at minimum. Because she's like, "How long have you been back?" Watching it, you're thinking, "Oh, he just got back." He's like,
Yep.
I've been here about a year, maybe a little more." Bro, what?
Literally.
So it's like, yeah, this definitely could have been expanded out a lot more. I mean, this easily could have been pushed out to like a 3.5 hour film, easily. There's no question about it. So yeah, I agree, man. I mean, you're not seeing that happen anymore, where people are making those type of films, unless just like a Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, or James
Extended
Cameron.
director's cut. Yeah.
Yeah, James Cameron going crazy again, like whatever it is. Like, it's a rare occurrence where you're seeing movies go that long. So I actually enjoyed it. I found myself, like looking at my phone at different points, and I was like, "What are you doing? Like, enjoy the film, right? Because like this is something we don't get to do. It's just like, I don't know, man. I think I would love to. I'm probably gonna put my phone in another room when I watch part two, because I want to enjoy it without distraction again. But I love this movie, man. There's nothing else that I can say. This is just a
Yeah.
great film. This is one of my favorite films, honestly. So I'm glad we're able to do this breakdown of the whole trilogy. This is amazing.
Yeah, I'm pumped too, and I'll leave the nerdy shit out, but I got two more things to tell you. Two more things to
Okay,
tell you.
bet.
I'm gonna make you guess this one though. You ready? We're going
Okay.
over under on Realish for the first time ever.
Ooh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How, if you had to wager a guess, how much money do you think Al Pacino made for the shooting of this film?
Ooh, in the
Remember,
moment
this
or
is in the
retroactively?
70s, in the moments, for just the shooting.
Ooh, I'm gonna say, you're talking about the 70s. I'm gonna say roughly a couple of million.
36,000.
God,
36,000. Insane, bro. Insane. When
what?
I read that, I was like, what? Literally insane. And this, if you looking back, it makes a little bit more sense, right? Because he was already a star at this point, but this was his star
Yeah,
making performance.
yeah.
Insane that's how long ago it was, that's acceptable, and B,
That's wild.
that this is critically acclaimed, probably one of the best movies ever made, and that's how much he made is insane. And then the last note I got, you ready for this one? This one hit my heart because I didn't even register this until this time I watched it. So
Mhm.
all the cars, their bumpers, they have wooden bumpers. Would you like to wager a guess on why?
Hmm. I don't know. That doesn't even make sense.
Yes. So in the 50s, I don't know if you remember, there was a little thing going on called a world war, and all cars actually had the metal ends stripped to be put towards the war effort, and it was eventually refunded back in 1970. But just shit like that, like, it is
That's
so detail
phenomenal.
oriented, bro. And when I noticed that, I was like, is that like a ode to like hemp bumpers back in the Ford days? Like, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But no, it was because of that. So when I saw that, I was like, man, I have to say that on this episode because that was such a cool
Bro,
detail, bro. Such a cool detail.
I didn't even pick up on that. Okay. Oh, this is gonna be a great series, man. It's gonna be a great series. It's gonna be
Yes,
great,
sir.
man. All right, man. Go ahead, take us home, bro. Take
Woo.
us home.
As always, I hope you matched and enjoyed our enthusiasm on this one. Had such a blast doing this. So make sure,
Yes,
if you
sir.
want some more content like this across all different kinds of sports and things that we like to talk about, make sure that you follow me on Twitter at Negron MMA, as well as on Instagram at Chris Negron _. I'm officially in the 500 followers club on Twitter. Shout out to all of y'all who made that possible. Feels great. already steadily working our way up to 600. So keep running it up. Thank you so much. And please, the whole point of us doing this Ology series is to have your interaction. Please reach out. Let us know how you feel. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what quirky parts of this movie you love the best. I would love to hear your feedback on that end and get a little bit more interactive with you guys. But once again, really looking forward to come back and doing Godfather 2. Derrick, tell them where they can find you.
Yes, sir. You can follow me at Derrick OTS underscore OTS. That's DERRICK, the black way to spell it. But again, follow the brand, man. OTS Media Co. All social media platforms. OTS Media on YouTube. Again, if you have not done so, hit that like button, notification bell, and subscribe, man. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff that we're working on, and you know, this is just the beginning. This has been something I've been wanting to do for like the last 3 years. This kind of breakdown and you know, whole series type of thing. So this is gonna be fun, man. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Matt, get well soon, bro. We'll see you on part 2. And we thank you guys for watching and or listening. And we'll catch you on next time. Peace.